Engels wrote about the concept of social murder. And Brian Thompson, as the United Healthcare CEO, was engaging in a tremendous amount of social murder. I saw so many people immediately understand why this death had taken place.
The fall of the USSR was one of the greatest catastrophes of the 20th century.
I'll give Hasan Piker credit. He just says what he thinks. He just says, I want communism and I want to murder these people. He literally does. Hey there, friends, fans, and foes of Dad Saves America. John Papola here, and well, I thought I would take this Friday to talk about communism because the New York Times, they really outdid themselves with this playful, upspeaking romp through theft.
I forgot 4 lemons. And on several occasions, I was like, I'm just going to go back, grab those 4 lemons and get the hell out. And
you should go to prison.
I know. You think they're going to ban me?
They should throw you in jail.
But I didn't feel bad about it at all.
Get ready for some opinions. Opinions, New York Times style. And, we're going to dig in deep because this is a lesson. This can be a new primer on how to deal with the rising opinion of far too many people in 2026.
I'm proposing a new term, microlooting.
I started going into the grocery store. I would pick up the thing that I wanted, and then I would go.
It's a survival technique. Gotta eat to live, gotta steal to eat.
It's always the theater kids. It's always the theater kids going on Instagram, being all chipper about communism. It's always chipper communism.
People are taking small things from big corporations, and they're feeling justified.
Like, look, everyone's shoplifting from Whole Foods when you're shopping there.
Red carpet drunks talking about stealing from Whole Foods. I take this one personally. John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, is a very good personal friend of mine. I've had him on the show. There's going to be a lot of talk of stealing from Whole Foods. So just be warned.
You're not going to steal from a deli like that. But Whole Foods. Bezos, Amazon, all that.
We should be rioting, but we're tired, so I'm going to take these bagels.
But is it a slippery slope? What's going on with our moral code? To find out, I'm talking to political commentator Hasan Piker and New Yorker writer Jia Tolentino.
What's going on with our moral code? Let me talk to celebrated communist Hasan Piker and sort of stand in for the median New York liberal woman, New York magazine writer. Who are these people? Well, our host, Nadja, among her many talents, including being very chipper talking about theft, as you will see, she is a children's book writer, of course. So you might have on your shelf for your kids Zig and Wiki's various adventures. I have not read these. They might be adorable. I would not be surprised if there's a little crypto left-wing messaging there in the cow. I used to work at Nickelodeon. This is an unsurprising thing. It's unsurprising. And of course, Hasan Piker has been getting the corporate press glow up for a long time. He is a big Twitch streamer. He's at a constant war with fellow Austinite Asmund Gold, who is superior. I watch Asmund pretty frequently. You know, a progressive mind and a body made for the manosphere. This was a prior New York Times glow up on Mr. Communism. And then even the more critical Ross Dohat. Hasan Piker is flirting with the revolution. Well, the revolution he's flirting with is the communist revolution.
The fall of the USSR was one of the greatest catastrophes of the 20th century.
Yeah, that's from a recent Yale speech. It gets so much worse than that, though. You will see in this video the glammed up, glowed up, on a comfy chair Piker, but in his streaming chair, he sounds a little different. He sounds a little less caring and sharing. There's a little less caring, a little more something else.
As Vietnamese refugee, we have endured suffering under the communist regime, and we believe that...
Okay, you, dude. I mean, seriously, you, old lady. Shut the up, you stupid, idiotic old lady with your stupid gamer headset. Who is you harder, America or Ho Chi Minh? Suck my old lady. Dude, yo, this refugee, okay? Seriously.
It's 2026. Theoretically, the New York Times really cares about immigrants and refugees and people suffering under oppression, and they're glowing him up, and that's how he treats refugees that have survived the actual oppression of communism. The other participant is this woman, Jia Tolentino. You got to be Italian with this nonsense with the communism. She's a writer for the New Yorker, and I'm not sure why she's the right one to ask about the moral crisis going on. She's a news and pop culture commentator. Her work includes looking at the age of the Instagram face, which is the duck face, I guess, and Rowan Farrow, Britney Spears' conservatorship nightmare. This is her beat. Her beat is Britney Spears, a lot of Jennifer Lawrence articles, and then, of course, a 2023 National Magazine Award for columns and essays on abortion. Again, she might otherwise be a lovely person, but she is very much a stand-in for this type of mentality. But let's dig in, shall we? First up, a couple quick questions for the group.
Thank you both so much for being here with me today to talk about this. Hi, Jia.
Hi.
Hi, Hasan.
Hi.
I want to start with a little exercise just about our own morals. Would you share your Netflix password?
A couple of sort of weird little silly layups happen, and they're telling pretty quickly.
Would you pirate music from an indie band?
The hesitations on trivial things. Would you pirate music from an indie band? I got to think about that one. Will you seize the means of production? Oh, yeah, definitely.
I'm pro piracy all the way, like across the board. Would you pirate a car? Yes. If you could, if one could pirate
a car.
I think it's larceny. Is that what it is? Is it larceny when you steal a car? What is it? Check. I think it's a felony. Would you steal a car? Yes. And if you want a free way to help support Dad Saves America, be sure to hit subscribe to the channel. More than half of you watching aren't subscribed, and it will help us grow to hit our near-term goal of 500,000 subscribers. We're coming up on it. And now back to the video.
It was just a classic thing back in the day where the government-funded anti-piracy initiatives would be like, dude, would you steal a car? I'm like, yeah, sure. If I could get away with it, if it was as easy as, pirating IP, I would do it.
Technically grand larceny.
All right, Nolan's got it. It's grand larceny if you steal a car, but technically he would do it if he could get away with it. Maybe we all would if we could get away with theft. There's a darkness that runs through all of us, as Solzhenitsyn would say. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, author of Gulag Archipelago. I'm sure Hasan despises that man. God rest his soul. But let's keep going.
Would you dine and dash from your local diner?
Never. Tip 35%.
Small acts of kindness, because you can really feel the goodness.
If I saw somebody doing that, I'd probably pay for their meal.
Yeah. Would you steal a book from the library?
Never.
No.
Right away, you get a little window into the sort of interesting moral calculus going on. There's certain people from whom you can steal. And then there's the stuff that, an urbanite encounters on a daily basis that if you stole from them, they'd make your day real bad, like the local deli. You can't steal from them because you have to go back tomorrow. We're really being honest here about why you really don't want to steal from the people that serve you on a daily basis. It's the impersonal theft, the theft by a third party that they get on board with in a big way.
Would you steal from Whole Foods?
You want to go first?
Yes. And I have under very specific circumstances. I think that stealing from a big box store, I'll just state my platform. Mm-hmm. It's neither very significant as a moral wrong, nor is it significant in any way as protest or direct action. But I did steal from Whole Foods on several occasions, and it certainly felt in a utilitarian sense. I was like, this is not a big deal.
Well,
this is how we ended up with theft below $1,000 in stores in San Francisco being decriminalized, and razors getting put behind lock and key as an immediate result. This is the moral calculus at play, the utilitarian math. What's Hasan got to say here?
I'm pro stealing from big corporations because, they steal quite a bit more from their own workers. However, one thing that might even help your ethical dilemma is the fact that the automated process that they design, these companies know will increase shrink, right?
So there's two assertions here. The first of which I'll get into deeper as we go, but the notion that Whole Foods or supermarkets in particular, but I guess just companies in general, are stealing from their workers. He's resting on just Marxism. And this is the idea that essentially all value is created by workers, and any profits or anything else that come about should go to the workers. And if there are profits and they don't go to the workers, that's the Marxist exploitation. That's wage theft, as you'll hear from Hasan later. It doesn't take account of basically anything else, such as who gets paid back for building the business in the first place. If your grandmother put her life savings into your small business so that you could buy all the things that make the grocery store stock the shelves, which you have to outlay money before you can sell anything. Everybody involved is foregoing the use of their funds and putting them at risk. And then when you hire the cashier at the grocery store that didn't have to do any of that, they get paid on the second Friday, having taken no risk. I guess technically maybe they took that first 2 weeks risk that maybe you wouldn't pay them after working for 2 weeks. But they certainly didn't put hundreds of thousands or millions, or in the case of the grocery stores Mamdani's building, $30 million for a small grocery store in New York City run by the city. But that's all wage theft. If you get any kind of return on investment, that's wage theft, and that's Marxism. And we'll keep coming back to that. But just understand, when the notion that companies just inherently are stealing from workers, underneath it is just Marxism. And that's what that is. That's the argument. That's the logic. It doesn't work, but that's where it's coming from. And then the second piece is essentially saying they're expecting you to steal, so just do it. they're assuming a certain amount of theft. And so because they've assumed you'll be a crook, you might as well just go ahead and be a crook. Again, like, the moral calculus of these people is really something else.
But what about the argument that if everyone just starts stealing wantonly from these self-checkout machines, Whole Foods will eventually raise the prices?
Yeah, chaos, full chaos. Let's go. I mean, look,
Throughout this, you'll get the laughing at things that have caused the death of millions is perhaps the most grating theme, besides the sort of lispy upspeak that permeates this conversation. Not Hasan, but the other two.
I'm in favor of fast and free buses, and also government-owned storefronts. And, two of those policies, the mayor of this beautiful city is currently working on.
Would you encourage stealing in the same way from a Mamdani-run city-owned grocery store with lower prices? And why?
I would not, because I feel like that's taxpayer funded, and the prices are this union labor, and the prices are also adjusted regardless.
It was funded by theft, so why double down, I guess? We already took the theft in the form of the taxpayer-funded nature of it. Okay, all right. Much like they won't steal from the library, it begs the question of what's this idea of shared collective property if you feel like you can't just walk out with it. I thought it was collective ownership of property and the means of production. I get lost pretty quick when you try to, and I think most people do, when you try to follow the logic of Marxism to its end. It doesn't lead you anywhere but words and rhetoric, and as you'll see, violence.
I think that hypothetical is interesting, right? Because if you look at it from a categorical imperative type thing, what if everybody did this? The converse is like, oh, what if every major grocery chain stole from workers and consumers? And that is basically true, right? Like, it's interesting. Like, I think it speaks to the thing where a kind of harm committed by the individual strangely continually draws more ire than the same harm being committed by a structure.
Two buzzwords that are important to understand about the modern progressive Marxist is there is two words that when you hear these, you just replace them with communism and you know what's going on. structure, and social. Systems, actually three. System, structure, and social. You hit these S's and you're getting socialism. You're getting communism. I'm not really sure, again, what they're talking about. Grocery stores are like a 1% profit margin business. They're incredibly difficult to run. I've talked about this with John and others. It is a hard business. It is a business that often goes out of business. But the bigger picture here is that the actual data on food more broadly, and food as a share of income, as a share of personal expenditures, is a really pretty darn good story, except for basically the post-COVID past couple of years. So, of course, I had the robot do a nice, even better branded graphic to just note basically the past roughly 100 or so years of food and food costs. And what you can see here, food has gotten dramatically cheaper. Over the past 125 years, the share of American income spent on food has fallen from more than 40% to roughly 10%. One of the great quiet victories of modern economic life. Here it is. Here's the graph. So in 1901, 42% of everything earned in an American family went towards paying for food. And today, at the median, not the average, which includes the ultra wealthy, at the median, 10%. Now you can see that in the little post-2020 period, because of totalitarian communist lockdowns and money printing, we have wobbled. Things have actually lost a little bit of ground. It was heading towards a downward trajectory, and we're feeling a big government pinch on food relative to 5-6 years ago. But it is still historically incredibly low. How could one explain this? How could you explain how these mega corporations like Walmart and Kroger and Whole Foods, which is now owned by Amazon, if they're such profit takers and price makers, if they just can set the price, why has the price continually come down? And the answer, of course, is that everything these people believe is wrong about the way the underlying system works. But you will hear it again and again. Let's keep going.
But I feel like what I'm seeing on TikTok and social media is people saying that they're stealing from Whole Foods, not just for the thrill of it, but out of a feeling of anger and moral justification because the rich don't play by the rules. So why should I? And Jeff Bezos has too much money. He's a billionaire. So why should I have to pay for organic avocados? My friends and I have started calling this microlooting.
You see this in the corporate press types a lot. There's a kind of third party people are talking about, but this is all clearly promotional of these ideas, as you'll see.
Because it has a slight political valence to the theft as opposed to just the thrill of getting away with something. Have you noticed this around you online? Have you noticed more people talking about stealing in this way?
It kind of speaks to an attenuation of the tactical language of direct action. You know what I mean?
I think that's New Yorker speak for spin and propaganda. Okay, spin and propaganda. That's what she said. Okay.
It doesn't work for me as a form of direct action because it's concealed, right? Like any successful direct action in history has to be ostentatious, has to make itself known, is ideally collective, and this is sort of necessarily individual and hidden. But I'm like, oh, great. Let's think of ways to, let's take this energy and let's move it into some other thing.
The smiles, the excitement, the problem with this idea you're pitching us is it's not big enough. It's too small. It's like, if you just steal, then you're just a thief. But if we all steal, then it's direct action towards a political revolution.
I think it's great that the valence of property is kind of on the table as something to be toyed with in terms of direct action.
So one instance of the valence of property being toyed with in the past 5 years was the mass destruction to the tune of billions of dollars and many, many lives lost of the BLM looting riots in 2020. And this group seems to think that being worried about that or being appalled by it was like a right-wing talking point. And how dare we be worried about that or take exception to the selfish destruction of property and looting of businesses under the guise of a moral panic.
the looting around the 2020 protests was such a huge talking point. It made people so uncomfortable. And I'm curious why, like, what do you think the root of that is?
One of the roots of it, because I remember, is there were people going around neighborhoods with baseball bats. It was insane. It's easy to forget because it's now 6 years ago, but businesses were boarding up out of fear of being like mobbed, literally, and people being killed. But this is treated now like into the memory hole it goes. This was all just a fever dream. This was the summer of love, and it was this was a mostly peaceful protest kind of deal.
I was thinking, that thieves are actually quite highly valorized in narrative, I mean, Aladdin, famously.
Robin Hood, Jean Valjean.
Right? Yeah, Jean Valjean.
Stole a loaf of bread.
And Robin Hood, of course, stole from the government. He was stealing from the government to give back to the people. He was basically a libertarian hero. That's the actual story of Robin Hood. He was like, the king is taxing us too much. Let me take your taxes back and give them back to you. But anyway, yes, Hollywood is covered in this ideology, sure.
If someone were to be stealing with a purpose, we love that in America. We do. We can love it again. Mm-hmm. We just have to do it with a purpose.
This is the effort here. Love it again.
In the Marxist tradition, adventurism is the action that is oftentimes decentralized. Oftentimes anarchists will say this is the propaganda of the deed. The action itself, no matter how violent or how disruptive it is justifiable because the disruption is the point. I believe in the power of organized labor and labor militancy and building these structures of power so that we can actually make more effective change, more longstanding change. So concepts such as microlooting indicate that there is an energy there, just like you said. And yet many Americans, I think, are totally oblivious to this political language. They lack the political education. They lack the class consciousness to recognize their position in society, and lack the capacity, unfortunately, to engage in some kind of organized disruption.
We lack the class consciousness. This is the Marxist way of saying people are too stupid to know what's good for them. It somehow hangs in the same conversation on the left with the claim that they care about democracy. I don't know how you can claim to care about democracy and believe that the majority of the public is in a state of false consciousness that doesn't understand the nature of reality. But that's what they believe. They believe that the reason why we haven't had a Marxist revolution in the United States is because we've done so well. Like that food as a share of income thing. We got a little too comfy. We lack the consciousness to see that we're actually living in the worst place on earth, which these people truly believe. Certainly Hasan Piker does. And we just need to be properly propagandized. We just need to get an education in political action.
The obvious thing to do if you want to chip into the Whole Foods/Amazon mega structure of exploitation is to unionize.
This is their short run objective, is just unionize. Okay, doesn't tend to work that great. Most of the unionized industries kind of suck. And a lot of the businesses that end up being unionized because it makes them inflexible become uncompetitive, which is why unionization leads necessarily towards the abolition of private property and the ownership of the means of production. This is a path that all three of these people believe. They believe unionization is just step one. There is no limiting principle with this ideology.
We are also lazy as humans. We're also selfish. We also, we've lost not only the language and the union density and the structure to engage in things like this, but we have also lost the sort of muscle that is built up to be able to engage in these sort of things. We've lost the rooms in which these things are planned, Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the confidence. I think we've lost the confidence within ourselves because there is not a lot of action like this. And in the absence of that, we lack the willpower because we don't even know what that would look like.
Hasan knows what it would look like. Hasan has visited the places, multiple, that have seen this action put into effect, including recently where He was engaged in one of many things that one could say is maybe treasonous, visiting Cuba to, well, check it out for yourself.
What's up, guys? I'm Hasan Piker. I'm here in Havana, Cuba, right now on a humanitarian aid mission alongside numerous other organizations, including but not limited to the DSA. And my goal here today is to bring awareness to what my government, the United States of America, has done to the Cuban population.
That's right. It's not decades of communism. It's the U.S. government, the sanctions, of course. Cuba would have been a paradise. All they needed was the perpetual subsidies of Russian oil and Venezuelan oil, which is the other story below these people, is they're all powered by petrostates. The Soviet Union only existed in any meaningful sense because Russia is one of the largest oil producers on planet Earth. And to this day, it powers their economy. And then when the Soviet Union fell, Venezuela picked up the pieces to the best of its ability until communism sucked so bad there, they couldn't even pump the oil out of the ground. They got so bad at it. So we've seen exactly what this action does and what it looks like. And Hasan knows this. He chooses to ignore it or see it through a utopian lens. We just haven't gone far enough.
The lack of courage is maybe a rational response to the kind of the way these actions are treated in the popular consciousness as well as by the criminal justice system, but they shouldn't be.
No, we should be encouraging, to the maximum extent possible, looting.
I want to get back a little bit to the anger underneath this. Like in 1965, CEOs were paid 21 times the average worker. In 2024, CEOs are paid 281 times the average worker. I feel like some of this is coming from a feeling of like the social contract is broken. And then there's also the slippery slope of what happens if we completely break the social contract and no one plays by the rules anymore. And I wonder where you two see the interplay of those two ideas.
This is a common framing. It is true that CEO pay has gone up. There's a lot of reasons for that. And for the most part, that it is not at the expense of the workers, actually. It isn't. Companies have gotten bigger and more global. And so they have much, much larger markets. And so the role at the top plays a bigger role in bigger markets. We have bigger companies. Now, there is actually a legitimate reason to be worried about the size of companies. But you have to get specific. And this is one of the problems with the kernels of truth that you'll sometimes hear on the left. The left is reasonable in being worried about power, being worried about the concentration of power, including private power, up to a point. But then it all gets put into a blender of collective action. There is no chain of title of the idea. Okay, who stole exactly? Like, let's take Whole Foods. What did Whole Foods steal from anybody? You've got to make the case. Show me the evidence. Show me the receipts of the theft. Because the simple fact that Jeff Bezos' stock portfolio of ownership in his companies, which are also owned by millions of Americans in their 401k funds and in their investments and in their retirements and in the union pensions these people love, that's where most of that wealth is. It's in the value of the enterprises. And those things actually move together. So as public companies get more valuable, the pension funds get better off, as does the other owners of the companies. A lot of these companies these people hate are public, but none of that gets talked about or explained. It is always the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, even though the poor have gotten richer too. But let's keep going.
The rules are already designed in a way where if you steal from the poor, you become rich. If you steal from the wealthy, you go to prison. So there's only one direction where you can do unlimited theft and erode the social contract for the 99%.
I'm still waiting for someone to show me where my signature is on the social contract. This is just political theory, the social contract. It's not a completely useless one. The notion that there is a shared set of expectations about the way the world works, and if they get too far disrupted, well, things can go off the rails. Well, fair enough. If we believe that the trains will run on time and that my paycheck will in fact come and that the dollars in next week's paycheck buys roughly the same as this week's, everything kind of keeps on trucking. When those fundamentals change, well, that is a kind of social contract. In a way, the most serious, genuine social contract we have is the value of our currency. Because that is essentially a kind of contract. Money is a contract over time. It is a contract that says, I have worked, I get this piece of paper literally in exchange for my work, and now I can go use it somewhere. It's maybe the one true social contract is money. But the rest of what they're talking about by social contract is a set of things that you assume you're supposed to get because you were born. This is the positive rights. The right to housing, the right to food, the right to healthcare, the right to other people's services and stuff. Wealthy countries are capable of providing these things. And by countries, I mean the people within them. But the notion that you're owed them cosmically is dubious. And that's what the social contract is. It is essentially a kind of secular religion backed by the gun.
I mean, it's a cliche at this point, but like wage theft is the most consequential amount of theft that takes place in the United States of America.
Again, the Marxist wage theft.
A similar invisibility exists in structural violence as opposed to individual acts of violence as well. If it's a police officer engaging someone violently, the automatic assumption from the average person is, oh, that's probably a criminal. They probably deserved it. But if there's any circumstance where someone else is fighting back against police, like in a normal protest environment, for example, ultimately, most people assume that that is chaotic. There's a chaotic situation, and that it is born out of the escalations from the protesters themselves.
So we've got a couple of recent examples of that, right? We've got Los Angeles in response to ICE early throwing bricks off of overpasses at police cars. There's been a lot of chaos. There was a lot of chaos in the BLM riots of 2020. Isn't that what you said you wanted? Isn't that what you said that you wanted? Chaos like 5 minutes ago?
Yeah, chaos, full chaos. Let's go. I mean, look,
yeah, this is what we're dealing with. This is the nature of this kind of discourse.
In my ideal world, what we are talking about, the one kind of theft being inescapable and hegemonic and, completely oppressive, and then people trying to get a little bit of it back through stealing from Whole Foods or whatever, right? It's in the ideal world, it is not one in which this continues and this increases to somehow even it out, right? The ideal world is one in which the theft from above is broken by regulatory means and or bottom up means like unionization, right?
The most unequal state in this country is California. It is also the closest to Europe in its labor laws and regulations. And it is the one that is genuinely hollowing out its middle class. So the closer you get to these people's idea, their ideal, the more inequality it produces, the shrinking of opportunity that comes about because everything gets harder to do and more expensive. Like building affordable housing is impossible in the state of California. It's impossible because of what these people want.
When billionaires themselves pay much lower tax rates than most Americans.
That is false. As I pointed out last week, the United States is the most progressive taxation country in the wealthy world. We fund our government on the back of our billionaires and millionaires to a much larger extent than Sweden and France and the rest of Europe and everywhere else, literally everywhere else.
My producer was just giving me this fact that she saw today. 88 corporations that made $105 billion in profits in 2025, including Tesla, Southwest, United, Live Nation, Disney. They made $105 billion in profits, and they collectively paid income taxes of $0.
So I want to explain something here. And I realize for some of you, it sounds like I'm just being a corporate shell. I'm not. The first thing about this, why am I not a corporate shell? Well, for one thing, everything these people want reduces competition. And competition is the thing that businesses hate the most. It reduces profit margins. It pulls away good employees. It just disrupts your industry. It disrupts your business. Competition sucks. And so raising barriers to competition, which is what most regulations actually are, ends up being good for business. It ends up being, this is what economic fascism actually is. It's this sort of melding of big business and big corporations. This is exactly what they're saying they want. They want essentially economic fascism on its way to communism. But this notion that corporations pay taxes, or that they should, or that even is meaningful, is like a fiction that it's important to know and to understand and to explain to your kids. So why is it a fiction? Well, I'm a small business person, and I've had multiple small businesses, and the business literally is a sheet of paper. It is a legal entity. That's what it is. And it defines the way you will do business, but by and large, it just says, okay, now I'm a thing, and I'm going to have a bank account, and I'm going to operate. And if I have partners, here's how we're going to do things, and what our shares of ownership are, and what happens if one of us leaves, etc., etc. The business never pays taxes. The people in it pay the taxes. Every single person pays the taxes. The business is not actually a person. It's only people pay taxes. So if you have a business and this year, at the end of the year, you have $100,000 of profit. It's not even maybe technically profit, because maybe you didn't pay yourself very much. So it's going to be your income. But it's the money left over in the bank after the revenues came in and the expenses went out. You got $100,000 in the bank. And you apply a corporate tax, let's say of 25%. Who paid the 25%? The owner. You, me, the owner. Now, who else pays the tax? Well, in a competitive environment, someone's going to pay it. It's either going to be the owners or the workers that didn't get hired because the tax took the money away that it was going to go towards the hire, or the consumer. That is what happens. People pay taxes, not corporations. Corporations are just sheets of paper. They're just legal documents. That's all they are. And this is linguistic magic being performed. When Whole Foods, which is a publicly traded company, it's actually technically just part of Amazon. So when Amazon has a profit and those profits are taxed, every single shareholder, which includes millions and millions of Americans, has less income in the form of dividends and value to their stock portfolio than they otherwise would have. All you're doing is taxing Americans. You're just taxing people. That's it. So I emphasize that because this is all linguistic games being played by people that are at prestigious institutions, notwithstanding Hasan and his YouTube channel, and know this or should, and if they don't, they have no excuse. So they're basically liars. That's the bottom line. This is just linguistic tricks, also known as lies.
You were talking about sort of what you do see as effective political protest. And recently, a employee fired Kimberly-Clark Warehouse as a protest.
Yeah.
Is that an effective form of political protest, or is that purely violent?
No, I found it. No, that you got to be tactical. I mean, I feel like Mike Davis wrote about this. It's like, it's not the action, it's the context in which it exists.
Do you like that question? So can you just burn down your boss's building? Is that acceptable? Did that need to be asked? Is that a question that in this crowd, that is a question that needs to be asked? And the answer appears to be, it depends on the context.
Do I think that some sort of fire could hypothetically be framed within a collective action that is tactically useful? Yes. Does a disgruntled guy burning down the warehouse do it for me in terms of effective political action? Not at all. But I do
kind of like it. It actually, but I can't say that because I have to be in the business of hiding while not hiding what I believe.
Sabotage has played a formative role in labor union.
Everything.
Yeah, labor unions as well. But if it's conducted unilaterally, then it's entirely different.
I don't know why. I don't know why it's entirely different. There's no moral frame that makes that feasible to understand.
I think that's when you get to things like killing the CEO of United Healthcare and there being an outpouring of glee for murder online because it feels like finally someone can actually do something about healthcare. I think 40% of Gen Zers felt that murder was morally justified.
And that's a horrendous failure of all of us to educate our kids in the most basic human values. Whatever you think about the healthcare system is profoundly broken in this country. The celebration of that was despicable.
But it's scary to be in a society where people feel that murder is morally justified. And I'm curious how we thread that line.
How do we thread that line? I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure why it's hard to understand how to thread the don't murder line. This is the trick of the cognitive elite. I'll give Hasan Piker credit in this group. He just says what he thinks. He just says, I want communism and I want to murder these people. He literally does, as you'll see. The other two are playing word games to hide what they really want, very often. And I find that to be particularly egregious.
Yeah. Engels wrote about the concept of social murder. And Brian Thompson, as the United Healthcare CEO, was engaging in a tremendous amount of social murder, the systematized forms of violence, the structural violence of poverty, the for-profit paywalled system of healthcare in this country.
Social violence. So I'm not sure what that means. I think it's, again, just copy and paste communism. But if you take this on face value and say, okay, look, insurance companies, actually all things that involve scarce resources. So insurance companies, government-run healthcare services like the National Healthcare Service in the UK and nationalized healthcare in Canada and everywhere. Everywhere there's scarcity, there's going to be some mechanism of rationing. And so you will inevitably have people who could have been helped had the scarce resource gotten to them and it didn't get to them. Is that murder? Is it murder? Well, if you make median American income, you are in basically the global 1%. So by this logic of social murder, if you fail to give all of your money to someone else, namely like any one of the bottom billion on this planet that earn less than $2 a day, you're committing social murder. Because you're withholding something that could make somebody else's life better, and hey, you don't need it. You're part of the 1%. You're part of the global 1%. You know, there is just, we draw a line in ethics between action and not action. Murder is action. Not saving someone is not murder. It could be something else. It could be something that is unacceptable or that should be frowned upon. For example, if somebody is drowning next to you and you have the means to save them, you don't kill them by not saving them, but you are violating a moral code by failing to save them. If it's a riptide and you're not a strong swimmer, but there's a chance you could save them, but there's also a pretty decent chance that you'll die while trying, it's less so than if it's a 2-year-old who falls face down into 2 feet of water. So this is what it looks like to actually conduct like good faith moral reasoning and try to grapple with things that are difficult on the spectrum. You know what doesn't look like that? Hasan Piker when he's not on a white cushy couch at the New York Times offices. He sounds and looks more like this.
Luigi Mangione oddly wears matching outfit with his lawyer in New York City court hearing, to his sick fans' delight.
It's sick. His fans. His sick fans delight. It's sick. Disgusting. Yeah, I guess we're a bunch of sick fans.
So he literally calls himself a fan of the murderer.
He looks like a nice, handsome young lad, okay? Which he is. He's a nice, handsome young lad, and also he's innocent. And I think they should just basically let him go. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the real deal. This is not the sanitized, bleached white set. But he's so much more straightforward elsewhere about what to do with people who have things that you want.
Well, my understanding is that the property owners who have properties there choose just not to rent it at all.
Yeah, kill them. Kill those and murder those in the street. Let the streets soak in their red capitalist bloods, dude.
So yeah, if you have a property and you don't rent it to someone, you should be murdered, according to Hasan Piker. That's what we're dealing with. That's what's just below the surface with this crowd, with the glowed up vanguard of the social media left. And they exploit healthcare to usher in this broader agenda, because healthcare is very personal and very difficult. And it is profoundly broken enormously by government in the United States.
There are not that many industries that are as universally understood as merchants of social murder, of structural violence upon people. And it was as if the language appeared lit up within people that had never articulated it out loud. There are so few industries, maybe that is singularly the one that touches everyone, that harms nearly everyone. Even when Charlie Kirk was murdered, I kept seeing reactions online, leftists are celebrating. And I was like, all my friends were just like, yikes, this is going to get so bad,
All of my friends were like, yikes, it's going to get bad for us. They don't even realize the things they give away when they talk half the time. Just for reference, and you can see a deeper dive in this with my my guest and longtime friend and economist Michael Cannon. The United States, about 84% of healthcare spending in the U.S. system is in one form or another controlled by the government. I might even be 89%. It is around the level of government control of Cuba. We don't have a private healthcare system. We don't have a mostly for-profit healthcare system. Over 80% of hospitals in the United States are nonprofits. Everything about the healthcare conversation is a scam. Its failures are overwhelmingly big government in origin. But there will never be a system that will be acceptable to these folks, because when they finally get their nationalized health care, they will encounter what every other system like that encounters, which is you start rationing the care. Talk to anybody in the UK. Not visitors, actual people with chronic illness in the UK. For real. Not I went to London on a trip and I stubbed my toe and went to an emergency room and it was lovely and it was free. That's not who you got to talk to. But, again, this is all about exploiting a crisis at all times. It's always, what's the crisis we can exploit? And that was the true disaster of the murder of the United Healthcare CEO in the eyes of these folks.
I wonder with something like murder, like the murder of a healthcare CEO, is it just a release valve for anger, or is it actually effective political action? Has anything shifted in terms of healthcare in this country?
Again, the moral valence. Is it effective? Right below that question is, should we do more of this? Because if it's effective, why not do more?
I felt enormously frustrated in the weeks following that Democrats would immediately take this up, pushing a sort of unified message towards universal health care.
Yeah, that would have made it justified, I guess, if we got suddenly a real universal healthcare, real government-funded healthcare, which won't be universal because none of the systems are universal, actually. Okay.
I do not think that it was effective political action. I do think it was an effective act of political consciousness raising. It was served up for someone to just spike that ball over the other side. And that did not happen at all. But I think, and I find that kind of one of the most egregious missed opportunities that we have seen in recent political history.
Yeah, that's what was egregious. The missed opportunity to fully politicize a husband and a father's brutal murder in the street after it being celebrated by your friends and you. That's what's egregious.
Part of the issue is that Americans have lost a lot of trust in their government. I have this other statistic here that in 1964, 77% of Americans trusted the government. In 2025, 17% of Americans trust the government.
But we should give that government that only 17% of us trust control of our health and our future, which, by the way, they took full control over in 2020 with COVID. And what did that teach any of you people about how the government handles health crises? Like, how does anybody still talk about this after COVID? That's the biggest question I have. Healthcare doesn't generally get talked about other than as a political crisis towards communism. But the government had its moment to show us what they're capable of with COVID and what they can do when the chips are down. And we all saw what happened. We all saw what took place. And it was totalitarian and anti-science and a catastrophe. Lying to people about how many feet they should stand apart inside of a Walgreens. Telling people that they can protest in the streets but not go to church. The whole thing was a catastrophe. That's what government does. It is just politics at its worst all the time.
And yet it feels like there's some political action that feels hopeful, like Mamdani's policies for New York.
Their favorite, this is it. So they're all excited about Mamdani. Self-described democratic socialist, functionally communist in terms of his rhetoric and his ideas and many of his appointments. But just remember, the relatively modest sounding things he wants are all just steps along the road to something far, far more nefarious. And you just hear it with them. They hide it, but only subtly.
If the material conditions of an average person's life are ameliorated by a redistribution of wealth, then the conditions become more possible to take time and take risks and organize, right? Like, I think one of the reasons, obviously, that these things that people don't have time to attend multiple weekday meetings, weeknight meetings, organizing something in their community is because they have to work too long. They have to pick up their kids. They pay so much for childcare. There's no margin for anything. And I think, when you're talking about Mamdani, when there's a political program that is about about giving people margin for individual pro-social, civic action, then a whole realm of possibilities and energy and ability and interest will begin to regrow.
You hear that? I know she's good at the New Yorker magazine gobbledygook, but the reality is what she's saying is, the program is to pay people to not work so they can instead community organize to further grow the government to take more of other people's money. That's what she's saying. She's saying this is all the steps on the way to the unlimited total state. So they can engage in paid shenanigans, like some of the shenanigans that appear to have been getting paid for by the Southern Poverty Law Center. That is a story I will dig into deeper when more of the details are crystal clear, but it sure appears like that's the kind of action she wants, the sort of, take it to the streets and cause more chaos.
I want to let 1,000 Zorons bloom all around the country, because there are people like Zoran out there. And they're just waiting to be elected and waiting to come into a position of power and show the rest of the country that, no, you can actually do things. You can do good governance.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that. You know what? Here's the thing. You can do things right now. You don't need the government to do things. We all can do things. We doing things isn't the same thing as the government doing them. And that's the thing that this crowd they can't understand, that civil society is not synonymous with the state, that community organizing is often and almost always more effectively done privately and voluntarily. Because if you're going to gather your community to actually get something done, not just sort of throw your fist in the air, but for example, I had Alan Graham on here, who's built the tiny house village to address homelessness here in Austin. That's community organizing. That's a nonprofit, philanthropically funded, actually doing more for the homeless people he serves than any of this homeless industrial complex, government-funded, faceless bureaucrat ripoff schemes that come out of this crowd. This is all luxury beliefs. They're sitting in their beautiful bleached white room, overlooking this Upper West Side or whatever, talking about how great it would be if somebody else did the things that are necessary to make the world a better place. And they want to advocate for somebody else doing the things. But I'm here to tell you, you can do the things. That's what we're here to do. We're here to get to work, not to hope someone else will do it for us. As we come to an end, this truly cringe conversation goes into a lightning round, and it might be the most banal face of evil you'll ever see. So we've heard about the utility of political murder of innocent civilian people. We've heard about the burning down of factories in the name of social change, the quiet acts of theft, both large and small, and the bigger the better. So what actually gets these folks upset? What is too far? Well, you can't believe what they actually recorded and put out into the world. It really is shocking.
And so I just wanted to end by asking you, what's one thing that you think should be okay, but currently isn't okay?
Okay. Just wait for it.
There are so many perfectly legal things I do regularly that I find mildly immoral, right? Like getting iced coffee in a plastic cup. Like I find that to be a profoundly selfish, immoral, collectively destructive action.
You can steal. You can probably kill under the right context. Plastic cup. Can't do that. Can't do a plastic cup. I'm wrought with guilt over drinking coffee out of a plastic cup. There's these graphs that show the rates of actual diagnosed mental illness. And I'm just saying, this is the public data. White, affluent, liberal women are the most mentally disturbed people in our society. The more you get to the radical left, the more mentally ill you are. And it is because of things like this, because of the extreme narcissism that goes into obsessing about all the ways that you can convince other people to do things instead of doing them yourself. And getting wrapped around the axle on the stupidest stuff you could possibly imagine, like, are you drinking coffee out of a plastic cup? So if she's horrified by drinking out of a plastic cup, what should be okay that isn't? What should be okay?
Maybe like things like blowing up a pipeline. Let's say that.
Blowing up a pipeline. Mass disruptive vandalism that in many cases actually does lead directly to death because of the role of energy in keeping all of us alive. Okay, good. What else? What else gets these folks upset?
I really relate to what you were saying, Jia, of like, it is so hard to live ethically in an unethical society. And also there are so many moral compromises I make every day. I
do so many immoral things.
I am constantly...
They're right about that. They're right. They are right about that.
Acting in ways that don't align with my belief system and constantly having to justify that from ordering in food when it's raining out.
Okay. So far, plastic cups and Uber Eats in the rain are moral travesties that haunt these two women. Blowing up pipelines, killing CEOs, probably should be okay.
What is one thing that shouldn't be okay, but currently is?
So many things.
What, dare say, are among the top of the list? Hasan?
Extraction of surplus labor value.
Great, you went really silly with it. I appreciate
exploitation.
Yeah, anything above Mao.
Right, anything above Mao. They're all laughing about the mass murderous communist dictator of the 20th century. Maybe the worst of the worst. But again, he literally loves Mao. He loves Mao. He adores Chairman Mao. Don't take my word for it. Here he is in China.
Beijing, China, baby.
Oh my God, he was mugging everybody, bro. Wow. Classes struggle, some classes triumph, others are eliminated, such as history, such as the history of civilization of thousands of years.
Some classes are eliminated. Just the way the cookie crumbles. Just gotta sometimes break a few eggs.
Get me with thing.
Yeah. But it keeps getting better. His trip to China has got a lot of doozies. I mean, pay attention to this group.
No problem, chat.
Oh, no way. It's a small one.
It's the first version.
It's the first.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah. Really?
Is that a Bible?
No, that's a little red book. It is basically.
Yeah. Is that a Bible? No, that's the Little Red Book. You'll get the explanation if you don't know what it is, but just stay with it.
Little Red Book?
The Little Red Book.
It's the Red Bible is what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some may say more important than the Bible. Some may.
Especially over here.
Yep.
This is a red book. Okay. Quotations from the Chairman Mao Zedong. This is really, really special. Thank you. That's crazy.
I mean, just mass murderous. Mass murder, epic murder, epic. Gulags, the whole thing. He wants it all. He weeps for the Soviet Union. And the supposedly mainstream press has been glowing this guy up for the past year and a half as their shining example of the left's Joe Rogan.
I also think private schools should be mostly illegal.
Oh, I agree with that. That's a good one. Yes.
Zoran Namdani attended private school. Very, very, very expensive private school. Private school for me, but not for thee. Luxury for me, but not for thee. Heinous. Yeah, laughing at the destruction of the society. The laughter about diabolical actions.
Murder the CEO of a healthcare company?
Also, no.
No.
A mix of reluctance and sadness to answer the thing that is the thing they're supposed to say.
Steal from Whole Foods?
Sure.
Right there in that last little moment, you see basically in reverse order where we go. You start with steal from Whole Foods, you end with Mao. And that's the total picture. And it's important to just constantly come back to that there is a non-trivial amount of people being raised in this by our school system and by, luckily, a shrinking share of the media ecosystem, but still an important one. And so what do we do with all this? Well, aside from have fun and kind of poke fun at it because it deserves to be mocked, understand what the arguments are against these people. I've tried to sprinkle them throughout in this conversation, so you're armed with some ways to think about why some of this stuff, some of which might even sound appealing, especially on the healthcare side, because again, our healthcare system is a government destroyed catastrophe. These people don't have the answers. This ideology of Maoism, of Marxism, which is all this was basically 30 minutes of the New York Times, the paper of record, celebrating Marxism with giggly upspeak. We've got to do better than this. And this is not new to the New York Times. The New York Times had a celebrated reporter that was embedded at Moscow and was an actual agent of the Soviet Union, proclaiming that the horrendous mass murder genocide of the Ukrainians didn't really happen. So the New York Times has been playing propaganda with mass murderous Soviets and communists for a really long time, and we should never let them forget it, and we should never forget it either. And if you didn't know that, well, now you do. But let me know, was this helpful? Was this cathartic, if nothing else? It kind of was for me, I'm going to admit. Head over to the comments and let me know what you think. Hopefully some of this kind of stuck as ways to think about these issues. If you want to support what we do, of course, head on over to dadssavesamerica.com where you can become a subscriber there. That helps support the channel. We are a nonprofit, actually. It is still technically a business, but we have supporters like you that help make this show a reality. We've also got our merch store down below, so click on through and get a mug like this. And of course, have a great weekend.